Today I'll be presenting on Naegleria Fowleri, also known as the brain-eating amoeba. Now, Naegleria Fowleri is a single-celled protozoa first identified by Fowler and Carter in Australia. If you look to the image on the right, you'll see the single-celled organism on a wet mount of cerebrospinal fluid in the trophozoite stage. Now, N. fowleri is a thermophilic organism, meaning that it grows at higher temperatures, upwards of 46 degrees Celsius. And furthermore, it's typically a waterborne pathogen, meaning that it grows in warm lakes, rivers, hot springs, or poorly maintained swimming pools. However, it's important to note that this water has to be fresh water, as the organism is unable to survive in salt water, even at very low concentrations of 0.5 to 1% NaCl. Now, N. fowleri has three different stages in its life cycle, including the cyst stage, the trophozoite stage, and the flagellate stage. And you can see these three stages on this bottom picture here sequentially. In the trophozoite stage, this is the reproductive stage, in which the organism actually infects the individuals, and it's identified by its apparent nucleus as well as a halo surrounding the organism. And you can see that in this middle image here. In the trophozoite stage, the organism utilizes pseudopodia for motility, meaning that it extends its cell wall and then fills that area with cytoplasm in order to propel the organism towards a stimulus. Furthermore, it's able to phagocytize red blood cells in the tissue, and it's in this stage that it infects the cerebrospinal fluid and surrounding tissue. In the flagellate stage, this is a temporary stage formed in response to stress, including reduced food supply or change in ionic concentration. And of course, this is characterized by formation of flagella. And this image is the bottom right picture here. And finally, there's the cyst stage, which forms in response to unfavorable conditions such as lack of nutrients, overcrowding, and cold temperatures below 10 degrees Celsius. Now, this stage can be likened to an endospore stage formed by a bacteria in which the organism remains in this state until it can find a more suitable environment. Furthermore, it's important to note that cysts of Naegleria Fowleri can survive for weeks to months in cold temperature. As you can see here, here's just an image of the Naegleria Fowleri life cycle, where the organism starts as a cyst or a trophozoite in the water or soil, and then enters into the nasal mucosa, where it migrates to the brain via the olfactory nerves and causes primary amoebic meningoencephalitis. Now, infection, as I just mentioned, occurs when the protist enters the body through the nasal passages. Now, since the organism is waterborne, this typically occurs in freshwater bodies or contaminated swimming pools where humans are swimming or diving, which means that water can often be forced up through the nostrils, allowing the protist opportunity to enter the body. One other means by which the organism can enter the body is through nasal irrigation, such as through a neti pot, as shown on the right. Now, the organism cannot be spread from person to person, and furthermore, it's important to note that digestion of the organism, such as drinking contaminated water, also will not infect the person. Furthermore, infection occurs most often during summer months when the water temperature is higher. Now, pathogenesis of the organism. The organism causes primary amoebic meningoencephalitis, which, simply put, is a destruction of brain tissue and causes brain swelling. So if you look on this image on the right, on the bottom image, you'll see discoloration, where the arrow is pointing, and that's necrosis of the brain. And then in both images, you can also see hemorrhaging, where there was excessive bleeding in the brain. Now, symptoms of primary amoebic meningoencephalitis start 1 to 7 days after exposure, and death occurs 1 to 12 days after symptoms present, with a median of about 5.3 days. Now, unfortunately, Naegleria Fowleri has a very high mortality rate of over 95%. Means of infection. Now, as stated before, the Naegleria Fowleri enters through the nasal passages, and once it's entered there, it attaches to the olfactory nerve and then migrates to the olfactory bulbs. All of this, of course, located very near brain tissue. From there, it begins to feed on nerve tissue, causing necrosis and hemorrhaging of the brain. Now, it does this through the use of a sucking apparatus called an amoeba stone, which makes cuts in brain cell membranes such that the organism can then penicitize or phagocytize the contents that spill out of the cells. And if you look on this image on the right, the arrows are pointing to those amoeba stones. Now, symptoms of primary amoebic meningoencephalitis in stage 1 include severe frontal headache, nausea and vomiting, fever, and an inability to smell. And of course, this inability to smell is actually caused by the organism digesting and eating those olfactory nerves and olfactory bulbs. In stage 2, the symptoms become more severe, including stiff neck, seizures, altered mental status, hallucinations, as well as coma. Now, Naegleria Fowleri is actually a relatively rare disease with only 132 cases in the USA from 1962 to 2013, a little over 50 years, and approximately 230 cases from 1960 to 2011. Now, there have been 3 known survivors in the United States, and 2 of those have been as recently as 2013. There have also been documented cases in Asia, New Zealand, India, Pakistan, Venezuela, as well as the Czech Republic. And if you look on this image on the right, we see that most of the documented cases are occurring near the border in the lower states where the temperature is a little bit higher, so the organism is able to grow better. Now, as far as treatment, historically there's been no known treatment for PAM. However, there have been several drugs, including miltefosine, amphotericin B, and chlorpromazine, which have all shown to have some effect on the organism, with chlorpromazine actually showing the best results. Furthermore, therapeutic hypothermia has also been used by lowering body temperature in order to reduce swelling of the brain. Now, unfortunately, because the disease is so rare, there has not been much push for a better treatment at this time. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.